I'm Tia,
And I'm Toni.
and this is Emotions Unscripted. So, how are you doing this week?
I am doing good, hanging in there. Just been resting and just trying to keep balance. But how was your week?
Good. I like that idea of balance, but I think I've been in a place of like chaos. And I don't even know what it is. I think it's just more of I pile all this stuff on me, and it's like, do it all, execute it all. And it becomes like, oh, I'm working on this, and I'm working on this, and I'm working on this. And so it's just like all over the place. But I think I was when I was working with clients over the past couple of weeks, I started thinking about something that I tell myself a lot, and it is you don't need a safety net. And so, one of the things that I realized about myself when I was going through the dating world and in and out of relationships and stuff, I realized I never like held like the men that I was dating to the standards that hold men to now. And I had to like sit with myself for a while, and it's like, why do I do that? Why do just bring these guys in and put them over there on the shelf? Like, I didn't require anything from them. They were just there. And I was like, oh, they're your safety net. And so, like in the circus, and they're on the little on the wires, doing their little acrobats and stuff. And it's like they have that safety net in case they fall. And so I always had them there just in case I fell and I needed something, they were there. And I didn't really draw that connection until my mom died. And after she died, I remember telling myself, I was like, I'm not ready yet. And then I was like, what does that even mean? This is what happens when you're a therapist. You analyze everything that you say. And I was like, what does that mean that I'm not ready yet? And I was like, I'm not ready to be an adult yet. I'm not ready to be a parent yet, even though I already had 4 kids at that point. And I was like, I'm not ready to do any of this on my own. And that's when I realized that I had used my parents as safety nets. And then I started using men as safety nets. And I always had these safety nets. And like a couple of days ago, or maybe last week it was, and I was sitting there and I was talking to a client about safety nets, and it kind of dawned on me is that language that I was telling myself of I need this safety net, what it was telling me is that you can't do this on your own, or you need somebody there to catch you, because guess what, you're going to fail, you're going to fall. And so I didn't realize that I was for years basically telling myself that I was going to fail. And it wasn't until I recognized that I had these safety nets and I removed them that I was able to soar. And I thought about like, yeah, that last relationship, after I got out of that relationship and I recognized they were a safety net, guess what happened? I increased my profits in my business. I was able to expand. I brought on new people. Like all these things happened because now I didn't have this safety net. I wasn't telling myself that I was going to fall. It was more like, failure's not an option. It was. And so my brain started operating with that language that goes in line with failure's not an option. And so you just keep going. But if I still held on to that, oh, you can fall, you need to have this behind you, then I would have still been at a place, operating like somebody who's scared or who won't take any risks because I may fall. And I was like, ooh, it kind of just goes back into like the power of like the language that we tell ourselves and the power of like our thoughts. And I didn't recognize how much having that safety net was inhibiting, or telling myself that I needed that safety net was inhibiting my growth.
Yeah, and that makes me think about a safety net. It almost makes me think that you discovered like a limiting belief that was in your subconscious mind. And I think about that. I think those are like hurdles or blocks when it comes to manifesting or the power of thought. It's those things that we're not aware of. So I think
Mhm.
that that's amazing that you were able to explore and identify that safety net equals limiting beliefs or kind of like holding you back from your greatness.
And that's what I I feel like is a big problem for people is being able to identify like what those limiting beliefs were, are. And I think about like emotions, and I was like, emotions become that like red flag, that signal, that something, that warning to us that we need to kind of check in with ourselves. And if you think about like different theories of like therapy, like I think about like cognitive behavioral therapy, our thoughts influence our feelings, which influence our actions, but people don't ever recognize the thoughts. What they hear, what they see, what they feel are those feelings. And so they're like, no, I had this feeling. And I was like, you had a thought. They're like, no, but I had this feeling. And it's like, you really had a thought first. But but that's okay. We'll go ahead and start at the point of you had this feeling. And so when people are able to kind of take those feelings, those emotions, and start dissecting them and thinking about like what am I telling myself that's creating this feeling? And then they'll be able to see that process of, oh, the thought came and then the feeling came. And it's just like if you are constantly telling yourself, I'm no good, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, you're constantly having those thoughts circulating in your head, you're going to have these negative feelings which interfere, that create these negative behaviors for you. And when you don't know what those thoughts are, like you were saying, you don't know what those limiting beliefs are, and now you can't manifest anything, you can't create anything for yourself. And so I think a lot about all those thoughts and kind of figure out where are those thoughts, where are they, what are those thoughts, where are they coming from, and what am I doing with them that are interfering with my life. Because I think a lot of people, they'll look and they'll be like, I think this about myself, but subconsciously they have this whole other, book of thoughts that are impacting how they're able to kind of create or manifest their own lives.
Yeah. It almost makes me think of like this past week there was a theme about emotions and thoughts. And I was telling one of my clients, I'm like, you can feel one emotion and emotions only last for about 3 minutes, but they last even longer when we add that thought, that meaning, that narrative, and then that thought, that emotion that we had, we can just keep it going for like decades.
Mm,
Really important to be mindful of an actual thought and the meaning that you're attaching to it, and then the emotion, because I think that will make everything cloudy and it can really mess up your manifestations.
mm,
It also makes me think about how we have our childhood, we have our experiences, and we have a lot of beliefs that really aren't our own. And I think it's really important to think about what your caregivers taught you versus what you still believe in, what resonates, and what you want to change going forward in the future. And I think with that subconscious mind, we're just not aware of like what's truly our beliefs unless you take the time to check in with yourself.
mhm. And I love that how you were looking into, the thoughts that you were having, the clients were having behind those emotions. I always call it, you either feed your emotions or you starve them. And so you feed them with all the thoughts. Once you feel it and you start thinking about it and you start thinking about what's wrong and what's going to happen, and you start spinning it out of control with those thoughts, you're feeding it. But if you're able to recognize, oh, I feel sad, and then you just go on about your day, you're starving it. And guess what happens? It goes away. And
Yeah.
so I think about it like with like stray animals, and it's like, oh, if that dog or that cat comes around and you put food out for it, it's going to keep on coming around. But if you don't put food out for it, it'll go away.
Yeah, for sure. It makes me think about I do this exercise with clients when they have fears or things about the future that they're nervous or scared about. And I'm like, talk about it. Write it down. First of all, writing it down, like you write slower than you think. So you're able to be more intentional when you're writing. And it's like just get it out. Like we're all made up of energy. So if you're able to like actually identify and explore your fears and write them down, then it gives you an opportunity to get that out of your mind, to get that out of your energetic field. Then at that point, you can decide how you want to reframe that thought, if that thought even resonates with you anymore. So I think another thing is like really not just holding the fear in. I think people hold in the fear and then that messes up their manifestations
Mhm. And when I think about like fear and manifestations, I think about what I hear a lot of people be concerned with is like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what that looks like. And it's like, if I get rid of that fear, if I let go of that old story that I've been telling myself, what is the new story going to look like? And I'm like, you get to write it. You get to write it. And so it's not a oh, if I don't hold on to this narrative that my dad was a very bad person and made my life suck, then what do I have? And it's like you have a blank book.
Yeah.
And so now it's not like something is just going to magically start happening different. You get to write out that book. It's kind of like what I told people about 2024. And I was like, I know people were looking at, at the start of the year, they were looking at like, oh, this is going to happen or this is going to happen. And I was like, my 2024 is blank. I see nothing.
Hmm.
And I was like, at first, I was like, what does that mean? Why do I see nothing? And then I was like, wait a minute, it's a blank chapter. And I was like, that means that I've probably gotten rid of like all the negative crap that I've created for myself. And now I get to start writing a new chapter. And I was like, oh, this is exciting. What is this chapter going to be about? Like, bring out those creative writing skills.
And I love how you said that 2024 is like a blank slate for you. That almost makes me think about the impact of faith. Trusting in yourself, trusting in the universe or whatever higher power that you believe in. Because when you think about the future and you think about fear and anxiety, that is letting your subconscious mind know, letting the universe know that you don't trust the process.
Mhm.
And a lot of times when we try to control it or we're fearful, we actually get in the way of the manifestation and it may not be like as amazing or big and beautiful as it could be.
And what I hear people say is they'll be like, see, I told you it wasn't going to work. And it's like, so what you're telling me is that you always had that thought in the back of your mind that it wasn't going to work. And guess what happened? It didn't work because you got in the way.
Yes, for sure. One thing that really helps when working with clients is I'll tell them, okay, for the next week, I want you to think about your words as magical spells. Everything that you say is going to come into your life in some type of way. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, so you mean I have to be mindful of my words? I have to be intentional and responsible? And I'm like, yes.
Big responsibility. And it's hard though, because it's kind of like what you were saying is that a lot of our thoughts and words that we use are not our own. It's like where we have come from, the experiences that we've had, the societies, cultures that we were raised in, they talk this way. And so you just are talking and you're not realizing what role you're playing in and how things turn out. And you don't know that simple switch of like, I can be a millionaire versus I am a millionaire. You don't even recognize the value in that switch in terms of word choices.
Yeah, for sure. And you bring up a really good point. A lot of times with clients, I will ask them to define things. What does this word mean to you? And they're like, you know what it means. And I'm like, mm-mm. I know what the general population thinks it is, but what does love look like to you? What does the words and what it means to them? Because when you define certain words, that means that you're being intentional and you can set up those healthy boundaries. You can set up those expectations and those goals. But if you're looking for love and you don't really define things, how are you really going to tell the universe what you want?
Yeah. It's like when I have clients do their must-have list for relationships. And so I have clients do 5 must-haves of what they absolutely have to have. So kind of like deal breakers within a relationship. But the thing is like it's not just a word. And so some people may say something like, oh, they're fun. Well, what does that mean to be fun?
Mhm.
And it's like you can see a clown and be like, oh, that's fun, but that's not the type of fun that I'm looking for. I don't want a clown, you know. And so being very, like as you were saying, very intentional about what does that look like to have a fun partner, what does that feel like to have a fun partner. And so then you can kind of create that vision of it in your head. You can find those words that you're looking for and you can create that for yourself. It kind of reminds me. I remember when I was first like looking into, this is probably maybe like the second rewrite of my must have list. So this was probably late 20s. I'm trying to think about when that other kid was born, and I'm drawing a blank. I think it was late 20s, and I remember I was like, I want a man that has this, this, and this, and the universe said, here he is. And then I went on a date with him, and I'm sitting at the date, and he says, my wife. And I was like, your wife? What do you mean, your wife? And he was like, you didn't notice this ring on my finger? And I was like, obviously, I was blind and didn't see the ring on their finger. But then I started, like, after I was like, funny universe, you're real funny. Because it was like, oh, I gave you what you asked for. And it's like, no, you know what I mean. And it's like, no, the universe did not know what I mean. I did not clarify that I needed a partner that was not married. And so I had to make sure that in defining what I was looking for going forward, that I was more clear on that. And so that I wasn't just assuming that the universe would know what I wanted. And so I always think about that whenever I'm asking somebody to define something. I was like, you're gonna end up with a married man if you don't clarify.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think sometimes people can get overly they can get overly focused on the details of what they want to manifest. And I think the key to manifesting is very like being clear, being in tune, visualizing, using your imagination and visualizing what you want to attract into your life. And then on top of that, feeling the visualization. I saw something on TikTok that was like holding the visualization for at least 12 seconds makes it more real. I'm not sure about the seconds, but I think visualizing it and taking time, because if you don't explore what you want your future partner to look like, or your future career, or what you want your future self to look like, how is the universe going to guess what
Mhm.
you
But that makes me think about, I tell people, like, I'm a very visual person. And so when people are talking to me, I see it like in images. And so if you're telling me a story about what's going on at your workplace, I have set up a whole office. I see all the co-workers that you're having. I'm like playing out this movie in my head. And so I can visualize it, but not everybody has that ability to visualize things. And so when you're looking for what you want, when you're trying to manifest what you want, you can't see it. And so one of the things that I have told people is like, there are so many videos out there. There are so many YouTube videos, TikTok videos, Instagram reels. There are so many ways to kind of get an insight into what you want, a visual of what you want. Go look and
want.
start creating what that vision looks like. If When I was thinking about like, oh, I want a home, a villa in Italy. I don't know what a villa in Italy looks like. And so I had to go and search. I searched like real estate listings, and I just went through different houses, what the housing looked like in Italy, where I could live, those types of things. And I was like, oh, that one, that's mine. And so whenever I think about, oh, I'm going to have this villa in Italy, I now have that image of it in my head.
Yeah, and just like you, I'm really big on visualizing. It's very easy for me, but I think it's something I've done over time. But I do run into clients where they're like, my imagination is blank. I don't see the movie. I can't create the picture. And I'm like, that's okay. There's other options. You could always create a physical vision board, get some magazines, cut out pictures. You could do a virtual vision board with Pinterest, looking at the places that you want to go travel. Don't wait until you have the money. Don't wait until the right time. You know, what would it look like to go to for a vacation to Italy? What would it look like to buy that $1 million house? Like, you can manifest and not base it off of your current circumstances.
Mhm. It makes me think about also, I've advised people, so outside of like, oh, go look at the videos or go do like the vision boards, but also with scripting, I was like, you can sit there and just start writing what you want it to look like. Like when I was envisioning my next home, and I was like, I want an office space that's all my own with doors that I can close, like a real one, like with windows versus the closet that I was in before. I was like, I want a space where me and my kids can gather, you know, be a cozy living space. I want each one of my kids to have their own, unique space within the home. And so I was just writing these things. I didn't know what it was going to look like because, there's tons of floor plans, there's tons of different houses around here. And so I just started writing about all those things that I wanted. And that's what I found in my house.
I love that. I love that. Another thing that's like the cherry on top is like repetition. The one way to reprogram your subconscious mind, get those limiting beliefs out, is repetition of affirmation. A lot of people sleep on affirmations, but I know back in my baby therapy journey, and I was preparing for the NCE, I came up with like a little statement, and I read it every night before I went to sleep, and I visualized myself taking the test and passing it with flying colors. So affirmations in the morning and at night, especially before you go to sleep, if you're feeling like you don't love yourself, if you don't love your body, use that power of the affirmations to reprogram your subconscious mind that you are lovable, you are valuable, you can lose that weight, whatever it is. I think affirmation and repetition is very, very important.
I think about like I feel like when you're new as a therapist, one of the advice that we always give clients is like, oh, put it on a post-it note and stick it on your bathroom mirror, or use a dry erase marker and write it on your bathroom mirror. And it's always so funny, but there's truth behind it, there's a reason why. And I think why a lot of times people don't believe that affirmations work is because they're so far fetched. And I tell people, you have to write your own affirmations. You can't just go and look at this book or say the same things that other people are saying because it may be too far for your brain to understand. Your brain's like, I don't know what a white elephant looks like, but you're thinking about, I want a white elephant. And the brain's like, I'm confused. And so you have to be able to slightly envision. I always say, like, the what do they say? A little bit delusional. So, not so far fetched, but a little bit far fetched. Like, say, for example, I'm a strong woman. You may not be at the point where you believe that you're a strong woman, but you may be at the point where it's like, I'm capable of doing a lot of things. And
Mhm.
so that's what you start telling yourself is I'm capable of doing a lot of things, capable of doing a lot of things. And you do what you say with that repetition of it. And eventually, once your body believes that and gets to that point of like, yeah, that's true within you, then you can move on to something like I'm a strong woman. But also in line with the repetition is I always think about the power of saying things out loud. And
Mhm.
so what that does is it gives you three times exposure to whatever you're saying. And so it's like you think it, and that's one, and then you say it, and that's two, and then you're hearing what you're saying, and that's three. And so when you have these affirmations, being able to say the things out loud, you're getting exposure to it three times just in that setting.
Yeah, for sure. And to add to your point, it almost like I'm seeing like a bridge in my head. If you're able to look back at the past and see where you were resilient, to see where you proved yourself wrong, where you overcame something, I think looking at the past, you can come up with affirmations to help yourself in the future because you've already done those things. You've already went through those hard things and you survived. So I think using the past as a bridge to find the affirmations or create the affirmations that work for you may be a little bit better for those people that are like, "Ugh, affirmations don't work."
Mhm. And I think also with the affirmations is it's kind of like what you were saying. So using those past like thoughts. And so say you had a negative thought of I'm not enough. And it's like, well, how can we reframe that thought as you were talking about that reframing of it? And then it's like, I am enough. And so that's a simple kind of like reframe in order to give you yourself that affirmation.
For sure. So you know how like sometimes with my clients, I'll tell them like go to Target, go to Walmart, and go and start you like a self care kit, get you some eye masks, so that way on the weekend you can just do your thing to like love yourself. I think that it would be awesome for people to have like backup emergency affirmations or statements that they can use in challenging times and they don't have to think about it.
Mhm.
Whether it's in a jar or in their phone, I think that that would be helpful.
I tell people to do that all the time. And especially when they're in the beginning of their journey, I tell them, I was like, write it down. I was like, because in those moments, your brain is not going to default to like, oh, let's think positive affirmations. It is going to spin whatever you were thinking out of control. And then you're going to have to, you're just going to sit in it. And so you get this tunnel vision and you're stuck. And you're not going to be able to think your way out of it. You're going to have to be able to have something to turn to. And that's why I always suggest they put it in their phone because most people keep their phone with them all the time. And it's like, have that list ready. And even if it's like an audio recording of the list in case you're driving, you can just, press play and then you have it for yourself whenever you need it.
Would also be helpful, like you said, to put it in your phone. Also, like two things. One thing that I do, I use a spiral for my notes in session. When I get a fresh spiral, I will go through it and add like affirmations or positive words or encouragement. So like on that day, like I might need to hear like you rock, you're awesome, like you have the things to say. So like utilizing your phone, even in your calendar, like put it on random dates or a date that you know that may come up that may be harder for you, maybe grieving a person or something like that, and put little notes in your phone in your calendar so it can pop up and you don't even have to think about it.
Hmm. What it also made me think about when you were saying like the journals, it made me think about um, when you need like that evidence or that support that something is different or not true. Is I've looked at back at my journals before, and it's like I've gone through the journal, and I'm like, I was so silly back then, and now it's like, oh, look at your growth, and it becomes that those encouraging words to yourself of I've been in a place that was really hard and I was able to work my way through. And I know that because I read this journal entry and I don't know what the hell I was going through then, but I'm not there anymore, which tells me that I have the ability to do more, to be more, to create some changes in my life for myself.
That almost makes me think about an exercise that I do with clients a lot of times when they're dealing with like guilt or shame from the past. And I'll ask them, you in your current state, your present self, like the present version of you, what is something encouraging that you would say to the past version of you that's bringing up those feelings? And they're just like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, let's think about it. Like, what could you say in that moment when your mom or dad or your caregiver wasn't meeting your needs? What can you say to that 8-year-old version of yourself? That it's going to be okay and we're going to figure it out. And I'm like, how does that feel? So I think utilizing the past can be harmful, but it can also be helpful too, depending on how you utilize it.
Yeah. And that's why I do encourage people to be in therapy when they're utilizing the past because we don't want to open up doors that we're not ready to deal with by ourselves. And so, even if you don't do it in the session with the therapist, have the ability to meet with a therapist soon after that. So, a lot of times I'll give assignments to people to kind of dig into their past. And I'm like, do this right before the therapy session.
Mm.
Not do it in the therapy session, but do it in a therapy session in case we open up doors. I'll be there to reframe everything for you. And so I have a skill set that's a lot stronger than yours. And because I'm also an observer of it, I can see things from a different perspective than what you may be able to see it from.
I love that point. So I think even with manifesting, if you have like a lot of things or barriers that are holding you back, getting a therapist or having a therapist, I think would be very, very helpful to kind of help you offload a lot of that stuff. I think about an iPhone and how you have to do an update and you have to clean it out. And always remembering like you don't have to do that process by yourself.
Yeah. And speaking about doing things by yourself, I think about how sometimes I'm not in the space to be able to sit here and think positive and process things. And what do? I turn on my frequencies. I'll go through my frequencies. I'm like, that's going to be for, opening up my heart chakra, or that's going to be to remove negative thoughts or things like that. Or this one's for more like mental clarity type of stuff. And so I can't get myself into that space. And so I'll just put on one of my stations that I listen to and I'll play it in the background. And it's like, I don't have to always be actively doing things, but I can be exposing myself to things that help me to feel better, which goes back to what I was first talking about. It's like if you feel better, your thoughts are changed, your behaviors are changed. And so I may do things like that are not very active to be able to kind of get me to a better place, to be able to clear my headspace so that I'm not circling around a bunch of negative thoughts.
For sure. And I think another thing to remember is like if you're just feeling down and out and you're like, where are my manifestations? Why isn't it not coming into my life? Like check in with your physical body. I think that, taking care of yourself, taking a spiritual bath, taking a regular bath, going and get a massage, going for a walk, anything you can do to like make your body feel comfortable, I think that that automatically makes you feel better. So, don't sleep on taking care of your body or making yourself feel comfortable or going buy yourself some fuzzy socks.
Yeah. Even with like the massages and stuff, I think about different massages or different like stretches and things like that and how they can release things. And so where you maybe feel stuck or you can't figure something out, it's like, oh, I had this tightness in my hips or something like that. And my root chakra was blocked and I needed something to kind of clear that out. And now I can, clear the channels to be able to manifest things. And so, yeah, there's a lot of power in these almost, I guess we'll call them external things
Mhm.
that we don't necessarily recognize all the time.
Yeah. I think one more important point to add is like when you're manifesting, when you're visualizing, when you're journaling, when you're doing all these things, is like learning how to let go of the how. Like what is the saying? Don't watch a pot of water boil. Like you have to act as if it's on the way to you. Kind of like Amazon. Like I put in my order of fulfillment and it's on the way. And I
Mhm.
think that that's the trickiest thing because people are like looking out the window, peeping out, like, where's it at? Where's it at? Where's the husband? Where are the things? And it's like when you're waiting for it, it's almost kind of like you're not trusting that it's going to come.
Mhm. That kind of reminds me of like probably why I feel like in this state of chaos, and it's like I'm gonna make all the things come. I'm like, and it's that understanding that I know I still have to do some work. So even with manifesting, I still have to do some work. But I'm like, I'm gonna do all the work, and I'm gonna make it happen right now. And it's like the stars, everything, the people, everything has to realign for these things. And so I always think about it as like your husband, your future husband may be out of the country right now on a business trip. You can't make him appear right now. He has to get back here. And so you kind of have to be patient and wait for everything to align while you're also doing, the little baby steps to kind of create and write that story for yourself.
Exactly. Taking those small steps that, sometimes they can feel like your intuition is saying, hey, go get your feet done, go get a pedicure. Um, but really taking those small mini steps that will lead to those big changes. I think people want to make all these big changes, and it's like, well, can you just organize your closet? Can you take yourself out on a date? I think it's just about the little small things because the little actions that you're working on towards your manifestation, your future self, it should feel good. If it feels bad, if it feels hard, then maybe you're working too hard.
Yeah. It makes me think about one of the things I've told people is like, I want to work on being able to do makeup better. And I didn't go to Sephora and buy up the whole store full of makeup. What I did was, you know, oh, well, I want to learn how to do this. And so I'm going to go buy that one thing and I'm going to watch these videos and I'm going to learn how to do that one thing. And so it's those little baby steps versus like if I had come home with all the products that I see all these makeup artists have using, and I look at it and be like, what the hell am I supposed to do with all of this? It becomes overwhelming. And then what happens is that feeling of overwhelm creates doubt in my head that I'll be able to do it. And then I get in the way of me actually being able to create that for myself.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like everything literally starts in your mindset. When it comes to losing weight, when I work with clients a lot about losing weight, I'm like, before you go get a gym membership, how about you visualize yourself? Like, what are you going to wear? How are you going to, what do you want to work out? Do you want to do Pilates? Do you want to do yoga? prepping yourself. So like last week, something was like, okay, we need to start juicing. I was like, okay, cool, we'll start juicing. I didn't feel like juicing, but when I went to the grocery store, I went ahead and I took the small step of buying the juicing items that I was going to buy, and then I juiced 2 days later, and I was like, oh wow, it wasn't that bad. But there was a part of me that was like, I don't feel like juicing, but I juiced because I had the vegetables because I took the small step.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, me, I would have just wasted the vegetables. It would have went into the trash, just like my memberships that go unused. Those steps don't mean anything to me.
And you know, you bring up a really good point. Like, even if something doesn't work, if the gym doesn't work, maybe the Zumba classes will work. If the Zumba classes don't work, maybe walking will work. And it's okay to try something out. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. Maybe that's just not your thing at the moment. Like, I
And
love
that's
the. Okay.
and that's why I tell myself that I don't have to go to the gym. I don't have to do yoga. I don't have to play this virtual reality game that I got. What I do is I move my body for at least 30 minutes a day. And so what happens is that I'm telling myself that I will do something, but I'm not narrowing it down to a point where if I didn't do that thing, like I didn't go to the gym and lift weights for an hour, now I'm a failure. So I don't want to create this pathway to the negative thoughts. And so even if it's just 30 minutes, 30 minutes is just me walking my kids to school, watching them go into the building and walking back home. And so I always get it. And so if that's all I get, at least I know, like, check, I did something today. I'm on track. I feel good. I feel accomplished and things like that. And I'm not beating myself up. I'm not telling myself anything negative, and then I can keep on going. If I wanted to go to the gym after that, I could. If I wanted to do a yoga class, I could. But I don't have to because I've already reached my goal for the day.
For sure. I think the key to manifesting is just following the feeling. You know, if you try something out, I'm going to try it out. Don't put so much pressure on yourself, like you were saying. If you put all this pressure on yourself, like, I'm going to have a protein shake, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, check in with yourself. How does that feel? It feels stressful, you
Mhm.
know? So just kind of saying, you know, how you feel and just try things out and see if you like it or not.
And in line with that, I also think about how some of the external things that we do with something just like losing weight will interfere with our thoughts. And like with me, I stay away from the scale. I'm like, I am not looking at you because I can be working really hard. I could be doing all the things that I want. And then that little external thing, like a number on the scale, will completely shift the way that you're thinking about what you've been doing. And so being able to kind of find those things that won't make you feel down. Because, when that feeling comes in, like, it's that signal, and it's like, oh, I have this feeling, and then I spiral all these thoughts because I haven't learned how to starve the thought. I'm still feeding the thought.
Yeah. So follow the feeling. If the scale doesn't work for you, a good indication is your clothes. How do you feel in your clothes? How do you feel in your body? Because you could feel great in your body, your skin can be on 10, your clothes fit good, but the scale isn't where you want it to be. So I think following the feeling is like the biggest
Yeah.
thing you can do.
Hmm. So I think that being able to constantly, examine your thoughts, constantly looking at what you are telling yourself is going to be able to kind of clear up those channels to being able to kind of manifest and create the life that you desire for yourself.
For sure. I feel like the greatest analogy for me is like your mind is a garden, you know, where you're going to plant seeds that are going to produce the version of yourself that you want, or are you going to plant seeds that, you know, are from a place of lack?
Mhm. And I'm going to plant all the good seeds.
Nice.